What's the word, YouTube fam? Welcome back to the channel. It's your host, Jay Wade, and you are now tuning into Wait a Minute TV. Today, what we have is one of my favorite rappers of all time from my hometown of Chicago, Illinois, Common. He's going to be speaking with Earn Your Leisure. This is a clip that I wanted to react to about him speaking on the violence in Chicago and drill music and how they're interlinked. So, without further ado, let's get to it.
Once drill became very popular, the image of Chicago changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what's your thought process as far as how Chicago is viewed? Because most of the time when you say Chicago, people be like, it's dangerous, stay away, why are you going there? It's just a very negative connotation from at least Black people when they think about Chicago.
Yeah.
And then drill music has definitely played a part in that for sure. And so like, and drill has went over the world, London, New York, everybody's doing drill now. So what's your thoughts on Chicago's reputation as far as violence linked with drill music?
Well, I think drill music wouldn't have been able to come about if Chicago didn't have that type of angst and type of if parts of Chicago didn't have the violence that we have. That was the expression of what Dirk, what Reese, what Chief Keef. Man, they was them dudes is from a really tough neighborhood one of the toughest neighborhoods in the world. And they was talking what they've been exposed to and what they know. And it's really powerful how, like, we as Black people, and I say Black and brown people really, but how we take some of the heaviest things, the most difficult situations, and make something golden out of it. Because drill it created a sound, and it's like influenced the world, and it's dope. But as you said, that it's other sides to Chicago that I feel like people don't know. And I mean, if you think about it, sometimes people got a tendency to come from the glass half empty mentality anyway. Like, oh, you hear that story, so it's just like you generalize that's what it is. That's all it is. And I can understand why you would think like, man, if that's what it is, I ain't going to visit that place. But once
Hey, don't be scared to come to Chicago. It's not bad everywhere. I just want to let y'all know.
you touch down or just even open your mind, because there's other artists that express what Chicago is too, from early on.
Lupe,
Kanye,
Yeah.
Lupe
was a version.
Chance,
Chance,
too,
that's a
yeah.
fact.
No Name,
That's
like,
a fact.
Yeah.
like
That's a
that,
fact.
that talk about it.
Shout out to Chance.
But like just different artists that talk about Chance showed a whole nother side of Chicago.
That's a fact.
That
Vic
and-
Mensa.
What'd you say?
Vic Mensa.
Vic.
Oh, Vic, yeah,
Vic is
Vic,
dope.
like, yeah, Vic.
But why is Chicago? Because there's a
Shout out
lot
to
of
Save
cities
Money.
that poverty is pretty much in every city, unfortunately, right? What makes Chicago so different as far as the violence? Like, why is the violence so heavy in Chicago as opposed to New York or
Right.
like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it just seems like Chicago is just really intense
Yeah.
in that violent aspect.
Well, I think like gang culture, and I know gangs exist everywhere, but for us, like, gang culture was part of our parents growing up. Like the gangs was existing in the 60s, right? So that warrior spirit has been like in our DNA. And I'm not saying that it's gangsters everywhere, but that being said, it was organized for a while. And then as you know, certain people got incarcerated and it was not a lot of leaders there to like guide those who were dealing with the gang culture.
And they displaced people when they tore the buildings down.
And they tore the buildings down, displaced people.
What they're talking about, for those who don't know, you're talking about the Chicago housing projects. Back in anywhere between the mid 90s or really the late 90s all the way to like the end of the late early 2000s, right? The city of Chicago was tearing down the projects left and right because the violence had got so rampant and unscrupulous that they had to figure out, how to kind of like shake up, the violence in the city. And they ended up tearing the projects down uh, in order to, disperse all the gangs that were living inside the projects. But they were also simultaneously arresting the heads of those gangs, and they ended up, leaving the younger members who were left. They were pretty much without leadership, which inevitably, ultimately, trickled down to what you see in Chicago today with, the, young, I guess you could say, gang members, uh, just running reckless, so to speak. But let's continue.
But it essentially, you know, that warrior gang thing is ingrained in us, and that's part of like one of the elements that I would say is different from most. Because where's poverty, where's lack of jobs, where's lack of like education and kind of overall lack of hope, you're gonna get that. Like you can go to Brooklyn, you can go in certain places in Harlem or Atlanta, or like where you can go to these neighborhoods in Oakland and you feel that what you feel in Chicago. But I think it's intensified just by the gang culture that has been there for a long time. And man, I always be thinking like one of my whole life missions has been to be a part of the peace in Chicago, like to really figure out like, man, because I don't have all the answers, but I do know creating jobs, education, like education from a level, not just only in school, but providing people with ways to get to their dreams and stuff, is important. And just like hope, man, like hope is a broad thing, but it's like I grew up like my neighborhood ain't far from where Dirk and them grew up. My neighborhood, or where G Herbo and Bibby grew up. I grew up around some of the same stuff, but it was the hope that my mother instilled, that I saw for myself, that made me say, okay, I don't want to go too far over there. I might be around this. I might be banging with these cats over here for a second, but man, I ain't really trying to shoot nobody. That's too much for me. Like, and that ain't what I'm on. So my point is, and that was because I felt like I had some value. And I think, I like to think about the solutions to help our city.
For sure. So, I mean, look, I agree with everything he said. Uh, the thing that I think people fail to realize about Chicago is that we're so much more than the violence that, is ultimately like thrown out there via the media. Like, don't get me wrong, of course there's violence. Like, I'm not trying to say or take away that there is or there isn't, rather. But um yeah, drill is a reflection of, again, like he said, Dirk, you know, G Herbo, Bibby, Keith. Drill was a reflection of their reality, right? And I can tell you firsthand because I grew up with, cats that were, they were, into the gang life, into the gang culture, but uh, I saw that there was another side to them, right? And that they were not just, this hard and mean, rough, tough individual. They had soul, they had dreams, they had ambition. And it's a lot of that. But yeah, man, that's my reaction, man. Uh please, 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 please like, share, and subscribe if you like this content. It definitely helps out. Uh but until next time, YouTube fam, I'm out.